Hello, Bobcats. Let's get started with our Lesson 8-1 Day 1 assignment. So as we're taking notes or as you're practicing these problems, anytime you guys get behind, just go ahead and pause the video. You can rewind it as needed. That's the beautiful thing about these videos. Much better than real life, so you guys can pause me whenever you need to get caught up. So go ahead and copy this down. Draw your cylinder, put the directions down. And of course, if you are artistically impaired, and let's say that you have a hard time drawing something like that, you guys can simply just write volume. So the shape is a volume. We're going to find the volume. And you can say that the radius or the distance halfway through the circle is 2 centimeters and the height is 2.5 centimeters. So you can write that information instead of drawing that if you would like. So go ahead and finish getting that information down. Pause the video as needed, and when you're done, unpause the video and we will move on. So, looking at this question here, when we're finding volume, we're finding the space inside that three-dimensional shape. That's what volume is. And of course, in a math class, we measure that by how many cubes it would take to fill the inside of that shape up. So if I were to take little cubes and melt them down and pour it in there and fill that up, how many cubes would it take? That's what volume is, which is exactly why for all volume problems, whatever the units are, whether they're centimeters, feet, miles, whatever, in the end they would be centimeters cubed or cubed centimeters. And what all that means is it's that many little cubes to fill the whole thing up, and that's what volume is. So the formula for the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h, and the pi r squared part is the area of the base. If you remember that from 7th grade, the area of a circle, since the bases are circles, you're going to find the area of that down there. And of course, area is like squared units, right? How many flat little squares, not cubes, to cover that up, that two-dimensional shape. And then we multiply it by that third dimension to get the cube, which is the height. Now I want you guys to take this formula and plug the numbers in. So we could always use 3.14 for pi, or some of you have a pi button on your calculator. You can use that as well. And it is okay if you guys are using calculators at this point. And then after you plug it in, we're going to grab our calculators and type this in. But I want to point something out first. You see here that our height is 2.5. The height is 2.5, and we get it from the drawing, right? But I want to point out to you guys that the height is always 2.5, even if I took this shape and I turned it sideways. That height is still 2.5. And the height is the distance between the two bases, the perpendicular distance between the two circles, even if it's laying on its side, that's still the height. Okay, just like if you were 4'2" and you're laying on the couch, you'd still be 4'2" because it's 4 feet 2 inches from your head to your feet. Those are your bases, right? So that's how a cylinder works. If you lay it sideways, the height is still the distance between the two circles. So now, the only way we can get this wrong is if we don't punch it in our calculators in the correct order. So make sure that you're doing your radius first. Do your exponents before you do multiplication per order of operations, correct? So I go radius times radius squared. Then I can multiply it by the pi, or 3.14, or use your pi button, then times 2.5. And you get your volume. It's that many cubes to fill in that cylinder. 31 4/10. 31 4/10 what? 31 4/10 centimeters cubed. That many cubes to fill it up exactly. Or well, actually, technically, there's a mistake here, right? Do you guys see my mistake in my work here? Where's my mistake? And my mistake is right here, because this should have been about or approximately, right? Why should it be about or approximately? Think about that. And the answer is because I rounded pi, didn't I? I used 3.14, and pi is not exactly 3.14, so it's pretty close to this. Now, some of you may have noticed you might have got a little bit different answer. So let me explain. So let's say I did my radius squared, 2 times, we always do our radius squared first, right? And then we did times pi. And let's say that you guys use the pi button instead, which would be closer to 3.1415, etc., be closer to that number, right? And then let's see what happens. You see that it's a little bit bigger, right, than 3.14. Now, it still rounds to the same thing, but my point is you'll notice as our numbers get bigger than, 2 and 2.5, that this number might be a little bit off. And that's because some of you have a pi button on your calculator. And if you hit that pi button, as opposed to typing in 3.14 or estimating pi, then you would be exactly the right answer. You would put an equal sign. Okay? So let's move on now. So I want you guys to try this problem on your own first. Practice this. So you're going to pause the video, try it, and then unpause the video and check your work. If you're right, move on. If you're not, pause the video again and do it correctly on your own first. But just keep in mind, guys, you want to do these problems as many times as necessary for you to get them correct on the quiz. In other words, you actually want to learn these things. What you do not want to do, be careful to pay attention to this advice. What you don't want to do is not learn the material and then get your quiz and try to look up how to do the problems while you're taking the quiz. And the reason you don't want to do that is A, you won't learn and you'll be hurting yourself. But B, I'm timing the quizzes. I will shut off your ability to answer them after a certain amount of time. I'll give you plenty of time if you've studied. So make sure you're learning this material now, not just blowing it off and then just taking the quizzes and trying to learn it while you're taking the quizzes. You'll be hurting yourself by doing that. So go ahead and pause the video now and try this problem on your own. All right, so we have a cylinder here. We're going to find the volume. The volume is exactly pi r squared. Okay, but if I wanted to use 3.14 instead of pi, I could say about, right? If you're using your pi button, you could put exactly. My radius is the distance halfway through the circle, so I got pi times 4 squared times the height is the distance between the two circles. And at this point, I just grab my calculator. So on our calculator, clear out your last problem. Make sure that you do r squared first. 4 times 3.14 times the height, and we get an answer of 602 and 88 feet. So 602 and 88 feet cubed, rounded to the nearest tenths, would be 602 and 900 feet cubed. And of course, if you're wondering, wait a minute, my answer is a little bit different, try to remember what I said on that last problem. If you grab your calculator and instead of using 3.14, you hit your pi button, it'll be closer to 1415 as it keeps going, right? You're going to see your answer is going to be a tiny bit bigger. So see, I got 603 and 2/10, right? And yours might have been even a tiny bit bigger than 603 and 168 thousandths, because if you use a pi button, you're going to get an exact answer. But again, keep this in mind. Remember this information. Anytime you're dealing with pi, if you're close, you're right. So there's only going to be one answer that works, right? You wouldn't have this answer on a test as a choice, as an option, and this answer also as an option. So if you got this answer and you saw this, you know you picked this one. If you got this answer and you saw this, you know you'd pick this one. So when you're dealing with pi, if you're close, you're correct. Now, if my answer said 710, that's not close. That's not correct. All right, so you know how to deal with that now. Go ahead and redo that problem if you didn't get it correct first time. If you got it right, let's move on. Next problem. Pause the video now. Try this problem on your own first. So the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared. I'm going to round. I'm going to use 3.14. The radius they give me is 120. That needs to be squared before I do any other multiplying, and then times the height at the end. So I'm going to clear out my last problem. I go r squared first. R times r doesn't mean r times 2. It means r times r. And then I multiply by pi. Of course, you can use your pi button there. Just know that your number might be a tiny bit bigger. And if you're close to 452,160, you were right. 452,160, 452,160 what? Well, if it's inches linear, the volume, that formula we use would give me inches cubed. So, right, it means a cube that is 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. You need 452,000 of those to fill in a cylinder right? That's 120 across and 10 high. It's incredible, right? How big it gets. Well, that's how exponents works. Exponential growth is really big, really fast. That's how it works. Okay, so I want you guys to go ahead and pause the video. Give yourself a good 5 minutes and really try this problem before you look at the solution. Pause the video now and try this. So, did you see how to do this? We got to find the volume for the shape, but really all it is one, two cylinders. So it's two cylinders together means add those two volumes together and we're done. So let's find the volume for the small cylinder, which of course is pi times radius squared times the height. Let's go ahead and find that first one. I do my radius squared first. That's 5 times 5, right? Not 5 times 2. Then I can multiply by pi. Then I can multiply by 15. And I should get about 177 and 5/10. Excuse me, 1,177 and 5/10. So that's the volume for the small cylinder. Oh, what happened there? So the volume for the small cylinder is going to be about 1,177 and 5/10 what? Centimeters cubed. Now let's do the big one. So the volume for the big one took a little bit of critical thinking there because you don't want to be tricked. Because this circle down here, all the way across is 30 centimeters. That's not radius, that's diameter. So we have to cut that in half. Right? So we had to understand, first of all, I'm adding two cylinders together. Secondly, before I can use my formula, I need to get what's in the formula, the radius. And so the radius is 15 if the diameter is 30. So if it's all the way across, cut it in half. That's what you square. Height is still the distance between the two circles. We don't need to cut that in half. And we grab our calculator again. Clear out our last problem. We got 15 squared times 15 squared. Of course, you know that's 225, but if you didn't, you just type it in and multiply. And we get a volume of 35,325 what? And that is centimeters squared, isn't it? Oh, nope, that's wrong. Centimeters what? Centimeters cubed. Now, I know I need to add these two together. So instead of writing this down, clearing out my calculator, typing this in, and then plus typing that in, why don't I just leave this in the calculator where it is right now and just hit plus. Let's plus this other one. 1177.5, and we get a volume of about 36,502 and 5/10. And of course, if you use your pi button, it's going to be a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger. It's not thousands bigger, right? It should be pretty close to that. And I'll go over here and see, how do we label that? Centimeters cubed. So you guys go ahead and study these problems as many times as you need to so you have them mastered before your quiz next week. We'll see you guys soon.